Dear friends, the adoption of a special day of mindfulness on a regular basis, like once a week, as in the Western traditions, people observe a Sabbath, or at least in the olden days, they used to observe a Sabbath where they would not undertaking work or shopping on the Sabbath day, and have a day that was very quiet and different from the normal routine of everyday life. Just the same way in the early Buddhist teachings, and this is given in the canonical suttas. It's given in the sutta called the Dhammika Sutta, which is in the Sutta Nipata. The Buddha recommended that on the 14th and 15th day of the lunar cycle, and again on the 8th day of the lunar cycle, that one could undertake additional precepts, these 8 Uposatha precepts, in order to raise the level of one's practice by providing some kind of a contrast with stress and the busyness of one's everyday life trying to survive. In that sutta, the Buddha said that the householder would undertake not to kill any creature, nor to have them killed, nor to give permission for any others to kill. They lay aside violence towards all creatures, frail and firm, anywhere in the world. And then for the second precept, they avoid knowingly taking anything not given at all. They'd not get others to do so, nor grant them permission to steal. They'd avoid all theft. So under this precept, not only the kind of a theft that you could be arrested for, but even taking something by means of coercion is a fault in this case. So in the ancient times, the economy ran on the basis of a gift. One would do things for others, or if you had a craft, let's say, suppose you know how to make pottery, you could make a lot of pots and put them in the yard, and people who need a pot can take a pot, and then they may give you something. And thus this economy of generosity with the strong moral duty, not only to avoid stealing, but also the moral duty to be generous is a part of that. So think of stealing in a deep, more profound way. The sutta says that the disciple would avoid the unchaste life like a burning pit of coals. But if unable to remain chaste, at least they would not transgress with another person's partner. So this is undertaking complete celibacy is an extra practice of simplification and confronting one's internal instinctive craving. And through that confrontation, there's an opportunity for wisdom. Or you could say there's an opportunity to make a space for the bliss of meditation to arise because of not being engaged and involved with the pleasant and blissful feelings of being in love and being engaged in making love with one's partner. And then the second aspect of that, to at least avoid a transgression, which is almost like a kind of a theft. It's a stealing a person who's under their protection, someone who belongs to another, and you steal them. So don't do that. Then the lying is explained. In a council or an assembly, or even one-on-one, you don't lie, don't get others to lie, don't give anybody permission to lie, avoid all untruths. Again, this is a very deep precept. It's including explicitly the kind of a lie that one could be made a criminal and punished by the law, such as being in court, or making a false statement while under oath, or giving, I think even if you call the police and you give a false report to the police, that's a fault for you, and you could be punished for that. But this is saying even more deep than that, to avoid all untruths, everything saying something that's not so. This takes a lot of discernment, because people are not always aware of what's true and what's real. Sometimes they're just coasting along, or they're preoccupied, or they're just acting from their emotions, and they're not really thinking, they're not looking deeply, they're not bringing into their mind what is really the reality right here, and then speaking based on that reality. So that's also meant by that precept. Then one would not consume liquor or drink, nor get others to drink, nor give them permission to drink, knowing the danger of intoxication. For drunken fools do bad things and encourage other heedless folk. So you reject the whole field of the maddening, deluding frolic of fools. Again, this has a strong and profound meaning. And in the ancient times, it had a slightly different meaning. In the earliest times, earliest societies like prehistoric times, the discovery of fermented alcohol was a tremendously important thing. And it made it possible for people to socialize and experience being one with a whole crowd of other people. And so then this process of drinking together, becoming intoxicated together, was part of the very earliest religious rituals that humans did in prehistoric times. Nowadays, we have more of a danger, a different kind of a danger, because people have a tendency to drink alone, which is much more dangerous for their health and dangerous for their mental health. If people would always drink in society, they'd be a little bit more safe than they would when they're drinking alone. But even so, there's a way that there can be a kind of a religious madness that can happen in large crowds, that like the mob rule, or the mobs getting, carried away with excitement and rhetoric or something like that. And I think that also is kind of included by implication with the Buddha's idea that drinking is not only a personal problem, but is a big social problem. Then don't with this, having undertaken the precepts so far, they advise don't eat at night, which is the wrong time. In this case, the specific practice in the monastery is to eat in the morning before noon, and to not eat for the remainder of the day. And this is giving a great, long, wonderful space of time to be available for meditation, to be available for practice, or just to confront being alone with your own mind without the distraction of food. And then don't wear garlands, don't use perfume, stay on a low bed or a mat on the ground. So that makes up the 8 factors. And so the Buddha especially recommended doing these things on the 14th and 15th day. That's the full moon day and the new moon day, which it's not actually one day. It can be made up as 2 days. So it's possible to celebrate the lunar day for 2 days on the 14th and 15th of the cycle. And then one can add the 8th day, or one can add other additional days. Then after doing these observances, an intelligent person with a joyful heart, with a clear heart, would distribute food and drink to the Sangha, would be generous towards the parents, would undertake a legitimate kind of livelihood. And with doing all of those things, one would at least come up to the level of the gods. So this is the significance of undertaking these precepts. Those of you who are going to spend the whole day or much of the day being extra mindful, practicing mindfulness and clear comprehension in all of the postures, doing the errands or the work that you have to do during this day with as much mindfulness and clarity as you could bring to it. Getting as many minutes of formal meditation into the day as you possibly can. That's all built up from these precepts. Even if you are required to do some kind of go outside for some work or for errands or something like that. People wrote they didn't know if they could participate because they have to go to school or they have to go to work. Can participate. And during the time that you're out and about, please take as often as you can, take a minute of mindfulness where you stop what you're doing, take a deep breath, bring awareness to the body, and just notice what's the inner state of the mind and body, and what is your intention just in that moment. And then having made that good reflection, taken that minute or that moment, one can go ahead and proceed with the next thing that one has to do. Thich Nhat Hanh has a teaching about this. It's a telephone meditation, which always seemed like people who have to call the monastery on the phone would have to understand that this is what people were doing, because he recommends that while the phone is ringing, one would do this meditation and think of the Buddha nature in the other person, the Buddha nature within oneself, and making the sincere wish that whatever speech you do is going to be truthful, to the point, beneficial and gentle. And then after having done the reflection, then we'll pick up the phone and answer the phone. So this is, it's really an ideal. It's actually ideal to have a special day in which you're not just retreating from your regular activities, but doing some of your regular activities and trying to do it in a much more mindful way. today is this first full moon of January is what's known as the Durutu full moon. According to the story in Sri Lanka, it might be a mythology. It's given in the ancient history of Sri Lanka, but it does not appear in the Pali Canon in the suttas. But it's believed that in the 9th month of after the Buddha was fully enlightened, he traveled to Sri Lanka. So this would be 300 years before Sri Lanka was converted to Buddhism under the efforts of the Bhikkhu Mahinda and the Bhikkhuni Sangamita. But it's believed that this earlier visit of the Buddha set up the precondition that made it possible for the Sri Lankan people to later on undertake being converted. So at that time, there were two warring factions consisting of the Yakas and the Nagas. So a Yaka is a kind of a demon. It's an earthbound demon, which is very ugly, extremely ugly and very violent. And the Yakas were fighting with the Nagas. So the Naga is a term that's applied to a being who's like an intelligent snake, or a being who's partly snake and partly human. Or sometimes the Naga is referring to an elephant or a lion, but it's referring to animals which are at the noble end of the animal realm and which have some human-like characteristics. Like, for example, later on, we have a story of a snake who wanted to ordain as a bhikkhu. And so that snake took the form of a human being and got the precepts and got ordained as a bhikkhu. However, at nighttime, he would change back into the shape of a snake. And then when this was found out, the Buddha said, sorry, only humans are able to ordain as bhikkhus or bhikkhunis. So these two groups, the Nagas and the Yakas, were in a state of constant warfare. And Buddha came to them, and first he frightened them with thunder and lightning, and brought them to a sort of a shocked silence. And then he exhorted them to give up their quarreling. So then this has a relevance for actually the theme that we have today about becoming disenchanted with suffering, because it's all these kinds of dualities that we cling to, isn't it? Between us and them, inside and outside, part of our insider group, part of our outsider group, what belongs to me, what belongs to you, that which is good, that which is evil. All of the dualistic kinds of thinking are very deeply involved in creating the whirlpool, or the energy that keeps making us go around and around in samsara, being reborn again and again, and having come into aging and death again and again, having to face rebirth again and again. So the war between the Yakas and the Nagas, I would say, let us have the sincere wish for the tribes that we have today, the actual tribes of humans that are at war with each other, let them give up war for this day. And then let us stop being at war against reality. Let us stop out of our egoism, our self-defense, our clinging to existence, trying to be in denial about the way things really are. We recited this morning, for those who came to the puja, all creations are impermanent, all creations are unsatisfactory, and all things are without a self. That's the reality that we may completely reject if we don't know anything about Buddhism, or if we know about Buddhism, we may accept this reality at some level, to some degree or another, whether it's just intellectual or whether it's from deep reflection and deep practice. We understand and we accept this reality, but then there may be some level at which we don't accept reality. We're still fighting with reality. And this is why we have trouble settling down in meditation. This is why we go around and around in samsara. So I hope during the rest of today that we can think a little bit further about how to become willing to accept reality. This concludes my talk for this morning.